In a bustling city, the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the tall buildings. Inside a modern high-rise, a young man named Alex was making his way to his apartment on the 10th floor. As he stepped into the elevator, he noticed an old man running toward the door, clearly trying to catch it before it closed. With a flicker of hesitation, Alex pressed the button to hold the door open. The old man gasped as he stepped inside. He looked worn, with silver hair and deep-set eyes that held stories untold. "Not a problem," Alex responded with a smile, feeling good about helping someone. They exchanged brief pleasantries as the elevator started to ascend. But as the elevator passed the 3rd floor, it jolted. The lights flickered and a loud noise came from somewhere deep within the mechanics. The elevator shuddered to a stop. Alex felt his stomach drop. Panic started to creep in. The old man asked, his voice shaky. "I don't know, it's probably just a glitch." Alex tried to sound calm, but his heart was racing. The old man leaned against the wall, taking slow, deep breaths. They stood in that silence, waiting. A knot formed in Alex's throat. He could feel the old man's nervousness radiating off him. "This elevator was working fine earlier," Alex said, attempting to lift the mood, but the old man didn't respond. He simply stared at the floor, lost in thought. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. Alex's mind raced. What if they were stuck here for a long time? What if help didn't come? An announcement crackled over the elevator's intercom. "We are currently experiencing technical difficulties." "Great, just great," Alex mumbled, running a hand through his hair. The old man turned to him with a slight smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "No, just moved here for a new job," Alex replied, trying to keep the conversation going to mask his own unease. A shadow fell over the old man's face. "I don't have much left." The lighthearted atmosphere took another dive. Alex bit his lip, feeling the weight of the world suddenly resting on his shoulders. There was something poignant in the old man's words. "Memories can be powerful," Alex offered, trying to connect. "They shape us." For a moment, there was silence. The old man's expression softened. "When I held my wife's hand on our last day together." The elevator felt smaller, the air thicker. Alex felt a tugging in his chest. He wanted to know more about this man's life, the love he had, but time seemed frozen in place. "I'm sorry for your loss," Alex said softly. The old man nodded, tears pooling in his eyes. "It was, but I have to keep moving forward. Just like this elevator, we all have our hiccups." A sound interrupted them, the faint sound of voices coming closer. Relief surged through Alex. He exclaimed. Moments later, the doors finally creaked open, revealing a group of maintenance workers. They rushed in, checking on the pair and asking if they were okay. The old man and Alex assured them they were fine, even though their hearts were still racing. As they were escorted out, Alex took one last look at the old man and extended his hand. The old man smiled warmly, grasping Alex's hand. "You too, young man." Alex walked away, a sense of warmth filling him. He felt good for holding the door, for taking that moment, but then a sudden thought struck him. What if he hadn't held the elevator door? If he had ignored the old man, he wouldn't have had that deep connection, that shared moment of humanity. Later that night, Alex collapsed into bed, exhaustion settling in. But his mind kept wandering back to the old man. The conversation lingered, feeling almost like a dream. He had felt an unfamiliar sense of connection, as if fate had tied their paths together for a brief moment. Just as he dozed off, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Startled, he jolted upright. He checked the screen. A message from an unknown number lit up his phone. "Hello, Alex, this is Joseph, the old man you met in the elevator today. I wanted to say thank you for holding the door." A rush of warmth flooded through him. He replied quickly, "No problem at all. I'm glad we got to talk." To his surprise, Joseph replied almost immediately. "It's easy to forget the people we pass by every day, but you showed me that kindness still exists." Their conversation flowed easily, as if they had known each other for years. Joseph shared stories from his past, and Alex felt drawn into his world of laughter, love, and loss. He found himself smiling at the tales of Joseph's adventures, from road trips taken with his late wife to the little things that made life rich. After a few hours of late-night messages, Joseph sent a final note: "Tomorrow, I'll be in the park." Alex's heart raced again. Was he really going to meet this man who had suddenly become so important in such a short time? He hesitated for only a moment, then typed back, "I'd love that." The next day, Alex arrived at the park, nervous energy buzzing within him. He searched for Joseph, fearing that maybe this was all a mistake. But then he spotted him sitting on a weathered bench, his silver hair glistening in the daylight. Joseph waved, his smile warm and inviting. As Alex approached, he felt a surprising rush of comfort. They greeted each other, and without skipping a beat, they began to talk. Joseph's stories were like treasures. Each word held weight and wisdom, and Alex found himself hanging on every detail. They discussed everything from dreams to regrets, and in those moments Alex discovered more than just Joseph's past. He found reflections of his own hopes and fears. Joseph's insights made sense of things Alex had been experiencing: the loneliness of the city, the uncertainty of new beginnings, and finding meaning in connection. Hours passed, and the sun arced overhead, casting shadows that shifted and danced around them. Yet in their conversations, time seemed immaterial. At one point, as they sat quietly, Joseph turned to Alex, his expression serious. You know, young man, not many people would have held that door. A small act of kindness can ripple throughout life. Alex felt his heart swell, but it was just a simple thing. No, Joseph replied, shaking his head gently. It's more than just holding a door. It's about being present, seeing others, and connecting in a genuine way. Both men fell silent, each lost in thought. In that moment, Alex felt a profound shift within himself. The city no longer seemed overwhelming. It was filled with endless possibilities and connections waiting to happen. As they finally stood up to leave, Alex knew that Joseph had forever changed something inside him. He had been reminded of the importance of kindness, of showing up for each other. They exchanged numbers and promised to meet again. As Alex walked away, a smile spread across his face. He realized that holding that elevator door had opened a much bigger door, one to friendship and understanding. In the days that followed, Alex and Joseph met regularly, their bond growing stronger. Their friendship blossomed, and they both found joy in the time they spent together. Where once there was a heavy feeling of isolation, now Alex felt alive. He carried Joseph's words with him wherever he went, a little more hopeful, a little more willing to connect. It all steered back to that elevator, a moment that had seemed so ordinary but became extraordinary in its impact. Each time Alex stepped into that elevator now, he found himself glancing at the doors, remembering that day, that conversation, and the warmth of human connection. It was simply a reminder that sometimes it's the smallest acts of kindness that lead to the greatest change. And all it really takes is a moment of courage, a willingness to open your heart to the unknown. A typical Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago was about to take a twist no one saw coming. As the clock ticked toward 9, the familiar hum of the busy streets and the chatter of commuters filled the air. Inside a gleaming high-rise, a young man named Jake stood by the elevator, staring at the numbers signaling its ascent. Just another day, or so he thought. The elevator doors opened and he stepped inside. As the doors began to close, he saw a flurry of motion. A man, perhaps in his late 50s, dashed toward the elevator, waving his arms. Instinctively, Jake hit the button to hold the door open. The man gasped as he squeezed in, slightly out of breath. Jake nodded politely as he felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him for holding the door. It was a small act, but sometimes those choices matter more than we realize. Jake asked, trying to keep the conversation going, a gentle habit he had developed from working in customer service. 11, the man replied, adjusting his glasses. His face was a blend of exhaustion and relief. As the elevator hummed onward, Jake glanced at the man. He looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place him. Yeah, I'm the owner, the man said, his voice laced with a hint of pride mixed with weariness. In that moment, Jake felt a twinge of recognition. This was no ordinary guy, he was someone important, but before he could confirm, the elevator jolted. The lights flickered, and suddenly the metallic hum turned into an eerie silence. Jake's heart raced as they came to a sudden stop between the 6th and 7th floors. The owner said, panic creeping into his voice. I'm not sure, maybe it's a glitch, Jake replied, trying to sound calm but feeling the growing unease churning in his stomach. Minutes ticked by like hours, wrapping them in a blanket of stillness. They clung to silence, exchanging quick glances. Jake's mind raced, wondering what had gone wrong. Would they be stuck here for a long time? What if help didn't come? Help is on the way. Jake offered, trying to keep spirits high, though his voice wavered slightly. Yeah, but I'd rather not be here when the maintenance crew arrives, the man shot back, an edge of humor breaking through his anxiety. Just as Jake was about to respond, the elevator jolted again, then resumed its halt. The air felt thick, and panic began to creep into Jake's thoughts. What if they were trapped for hours? He had a meeting he couldn't afford to miss, and the weight of that reality was pressing down on him. By the way, I'm sorry for holding you up. I tend to lose track of time, the man said, shifting his frame. His voice now carried the burden of something unspoken, a vulnerability that seeped into the cramped space around them. Jake turned, truly looking at him for the first time. No need to apologize, I was happy to help. Fair point, the owner replied, but his eyes lingered on the floor, lost in thought. Jake could sense a deeper story lurking beneath the surface. There was something haunting about the man's demeanor, something that hinted at a life spent carrying burdens. Jake asked, intrigued and hoping to draw the man out of his thoughts. I used to be an architect, he said slowly, almost as if rehearsing the words in his head. I designed this building. It hung in the air, a heavy truth that resonated with Jake. I get that, he replied quietly. They both fell silent again, contemplating the city beyond their stalled elevator, the bustling lives outside that were moving on without them. The elevator jolted for a brief second, then the lights flickered back to life. Their hearts leaped, but then nothing happened, still stuck. The tension in the air thickened as Jake fought to suppress his dread. I should be checking on my team, the owner said, fidgeting. But it seems trivial now. Jake nodded. Suddenly he understood. Each moment, even the moments fraught with tension, held meaning if you let them. They weren't just two men trapped in an elevator anymore. They were two souls, connecting in a way that was happening less and less in the frantic pace of life. Finally, there was a voice crackling through the intercom. We're aware you're stuck. Neither Jake nor the owner offered any response. They simply shared a knowing glance, perhaps acknowledging the absurd nature of their circumstance. In an unexpected twist of fate, this incident had become more than just an incident. It was a defining moment. As they talked, the conversation flowed with ease, weaving through their shared hopes, dreams, and even regrets. They spoke about the architecture of their lives, the connections they'd made, and the isolation each had felt, living in the city with so many. It can feel like a concrete jungle sometimes, the owner said, a soft smile creeping onto his lips. Jake smiled back, and I'm glad I held the door. Minutes turned into what felt like hours, and just as the tension began to mix with ease, the elevator creaked and jolted again. The doors opened, spilling light into the cramped space, breaking the bubble of connection. The owner exclaimed as they stepped into the waiting lobby. They exchanged quick goodbyes, Jake feeling lighter, more alive than before. As he stepped out of the building and into the bustling street, he couldn't shake the weight of their conversation. That elevator incident felt pivotal, a small act of kindness blossoming into something meaningful. But just as he started to lose himself in the day, his phone buzzed with a message. His heart raced. It was from an unknown number. Curiosity piqued, he hesitated but then opened it. Hi Jake, this is Tom, the owner you met in the elevator. I just wanted to thank you for holding the door this morning. It meant a lot more than you know. His heart swelled. It felt good to be acknowledged, but there was something deeper under Tom's words, a connection forged in vulnerability. Jake quickly typed back, "No problem, Tom. I really enjoyed our conversation." Tom replied almost instantly. It has a funny way of working itself out, doesn't it? Jake's heart raced again. He felt a spark of excitement. Sounds great. The next day they met at a cozy cafe just a few blocks from Tom's office. The atmosphere felt warm and inviting, the aroma of coffee wrapping around them like a hug. They settled into a quiet corner and the conversation picked up where it had left off in the elevator. I've been thinking about how our conversation unfolded, Tom said, taking a sip of his coffee. Jake nodded, savoring the warmth of the moment. You're right, we go through life in such a hurry, but slowing down feels more fulfilling. Over cups of coffee, they exchanged stories, Tom's experiences as a struggling architect, Jake's own hurdles in search of direction. They found common ground in their struggles, sharing laughter and reflections on what it meant to find purpose amid chaos. As the hours slid by, they realized how much they had in common, not just as two men who met under unusual circumstances, but as people navigating the unpredictability of life. Tom suggested. There was hope in his eyes, a genuine desire to hold on to this connection. I'd like that, Jake replied, feeling an unexpected warmth spreading across his chest. From then on, their friendship grew. They would meet often, and their conversations turned into something rooted in trust and vulnerability. With every coffee shared, they learned to lean on each other, celebrating their victories and supporting each other through hardships. Every time they met, they would reminisce about that fateful day in the elevator. It became a running joke between them, but it also served as a reminder kindness creates pathways. One day, as they sat in the cafe sharing a laugh, Tom leaned in, revealing a softer side. You know, I was hesitant to reach out to you. I'm not great at this kind of thing, but I'm glad I did. Jake felt the magnitude of Tom's words wash over him. It was true, their friendship had transformed his perspective on life, illuminating the beauty in small moments of connection. Sometimes the hardest part is just taking that first step, Jake admitted. Days turned to weeks, and as they navigated through the seasons, their friendship became a cornerstone in both their lives. They would often speak of that elevator encounter, realizing that what started as an inconvenience had blossomed into an unshakable bond. Then one chilly day, Tom approached Jake with an unexpected proposition. What if we started a community project? Jake's eyes widened, fired up by the idea. That would be fantastic. Months later, they launched their project, filling the community with laughter and warmth. They created a space where people could gather, share stories, and lift each other up. Their efforts flourished, transforming their corner of the city into something spectacular. What began with a simple act of kindness in an elevator had now grown into a movement, a ripple effect of connection, encouraging others to open their hearts to each other. As they stood in front of a crowd at their first community event, Jake looked at Tom. Tom nodded, his eyes gleaming with conviction. It's proof that every choice counts. In that moment, with the crowd cheering around them, Jake understood that what had started as an elevator ride had become a lifelong journey. It was a series of moments stitched together through kindness, vulnerability, and the realization that connection was the essence of life itself. It didn't take a grand plan, no. Sometimes it just takes holding the door open for someone to change everything. And as the sunlight streamed through the open doors of their new community space, Jake and Tom smiled at each other, grateful for the simple moments that had led them here, thankful for the journey still unfolding ahead. The heavy metal doors of the elevator slid closed, and just as Jake prepared for a routine trip up to his office, he spotted a frantic figure rushing toward him, waving his arms. It was a man in a sharp suit, his hair slicked back but already starting to come undone from what apparently was a long day in the city. Without thinking, Jake quickly pressed the button to hold the doors open, allowing the man to slip inside just in time. The man gasped, leaning against the wall, trying to catch his breath. Jake nodded, glancing at the floor numbers lighting up above them. "No problem at all. 24, the man replied, a hint of relief washing over his face. As the elevator began its ascent, Jake felt a strange sense of satisfaction. In the fast-paced world of the city, small acts of kindness often went unnoticed, but holding the elevator door felt like a ripple in the chaos. It was just a moment, but moments could change everything. The elevator jolted, and suddenly the lights flickered. Jake frowned, could feel his stomach drop as they came to a sudden stop between the 15th and 16th floors. Anxiety prickled at the edges of his mind. The man muttered, straightening up, his expression shifting from exhausted to alarmed. I don't know. Jake responded, trying to keep his voice steady, even as panic clawed at him from the inside. The man pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. Only silence and the soft hum of machinery filled the space. Minutes stretched on like hours, and the faint, flickering lights cast an unsettling glow around them. Jake felt the uneasy tension building. There were two strangers, trapped in a box suspended between floors, sharing an experience that felt heavy with unspoken thoughts. "They'll get us out," Jake offered, attempting to sound reassuring, though uncertainty gnawed at his confidence. "I hope so," the man replied, fidgeting with his cufflinks, his earlier bravado draining away. As time crawled, Jake turned toward him, desperation breaking the silence. So, he tried to steer the conversation, anything to shift the focus away from their predicament. "I'm the owner of this building," the man said, his voice tinged with a hint of pride mixed with vulnerability. He let out a small laugh that felt more like an acknowledgement of the irony of their situation. "Funny, huh? Yeah, life has a way of reminding us," Jake replied, attempting to lighten the mood. The man chuckled softly. "You'd think I'd have better luck since I designed the place." "Jake," he responded, realizing they were both opening up in a time of uncertainty. "So you designed this whole building?" "Thanks. Architecture has always been my passion, but it's also exhausting," Tom said, his voice trailing off. Jake's expression softened. There was something raw and honest about the man standing next to him. "I know what you mean," he admitted. Their eyes met, and a flicker of understanding passed between them. They were just two men navigating the complexities of life in a city that often felt cold and disconnected. Suddenly, the elevator lurched again, and Jake felt a rush of hope as it started moving down. Light returned, illuminating the small space once more, and before he could fully process it, the cabin came to a stop with a soft thud. The doors creaked open, revealing the lobby bustling with people, oblivious to the stress they had just endured. Tom exclaimed, stepping out as a wave of relief washed over him. He turned back to Jake, his eyes gleaming with gratitude. "Thank you for holding that door." Jake smiled, reveling in the camaraderie. "Anytime." As he turned to leave, a thought pushed its way into his mind. Something told him their meeting wasn't finished yet, but before he could voice it, Tom had already disappeared into the crowd. The rest of Jake's day passed in a blur. Meetings, emails, and the usual noise of the city faded into the background. Despite the chaos, he couldn't shake Tom's image from his mind. The connection they shared lingered like a sudden warmth in an otherwise cold day. That evening, as Jake settled onto his couch with dinner, his phone buzzed to life. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "Hi, Jake. This is Tom, the owner of the building you held the elevator door for. I just wanted to say thank you again." His heart jumped. How thoughtful of Tom to reach out. Jake quickly typed back, "No problem. Glad you made it out okay." The responses flowed back and forth, each message a thread weaving their connection tighter. Tom shared anecdotes about running a high-rise, and Jake opened up about his struggles with direction in the fast-paced world around him. They both felt a sense of relief in this shared experience. It was a bonding amid a whirlwind. Once their conversation started to wind down, Tom sent a final message. "How about a coffee tomorrow?" Jake stared at his phone in disbelief. He hesitated only for a moment before responding, "Sure." The next day, they met at a small cafe just a few blocks from the building, an airy space filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Jake spotted Tom at a table near the front, looking slightly nervous as he fidgeted with the sugar packets. Jake greeted, smiling as he approached. "Hey there, I'm glad you came," Tom replied, visibly relaxing as their eyes met. Over cups of coffee, their conversation flowed effortlessly. They discussed everything from architecture to the challenges of city living, but the heart of it was more profound. They were talking about vulnerability, connection, and how easy it was to feel isolated, even in a bustling metropolis. "I often feel like I live for my work, but it's the moments like yesterday that remind me there's more to life," Tom said, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Jake nodded, recognizing the truth in those words. "It's like we forget to step back and see the world around us." As the hours drifted by, laughter erupted between them, mingling with the sound of coffee cups clinking and the comforting noise of the cafe. It became clear that this was no ordinary meeting. Something extraordinary was unfolding. Days turned into weeks, and a friendship began to blossom. Every week they met in that same cafe, sharing stories and showing up for each other in a world that often felt lonely. Their bond deepened, rooted in honesty and shared experiences. One day, as they sat sipping their coffee, Tom leaned in closer. "I've been thinking." He paused for a heartbeat. Jake felt warmth spread through his chest. "I couldn't agree more." As the days unfolded, their friendship turned into a partnership. Inspired by their conversations, they envisioned a community project to encourage connection among others. "We should start something to foster relationships in the city," Tom suggested one afternoon, his eyes alight with excitement. "Absolutely. We could host events, workshops, anything that gets people talking," Jake replied eagerly, feeling a surge of inspiration. From that idea, a vision began to take root. They created a series of community gatherings, inviting people to share their stories, connect with one another, and break down the barriers built by everyday life. Their initiative resonated through the community like ripples on a pond. What had started in a stalled elevator grew into a vibrant hub of kindness and connection. People began to open up about their struggles, their triumphs, and the things that made them feel alive. It wasn't just about bringing people together, it was about creating a space where vulnerability was not just accepted but encouraged. As couples met, friendships were forged, and laughter echoed through the hall. It became clear that their efforts were making a real difference. Tom laughed, his eyes sparkling. They continued their work, breathing life into a community that had once felt disconnected. They saw growth not just in numbers, but in genuine human connection. They felt the shift as walls crumbled and friendships bloomed. The cafe became a second home for both of them, a reminder of how their paths had crossed and how life had intertwined their stories. They often shared that moment when they were strangers, two souls finding solace in an unexpected place. Then one day, as they gathered to plan their next event, Tom turned serious. "You know, you've been an unexpected gift in my life." Jake felt a swell of emotion. "It's real. I never imagined a few simple words would lead to this." In that moment, surrounded by the people they had helped, they both understood the profound impact of vulnerability and kindness in a world that often pushed people apart. They were more than friends now. They were brothers in this mission, moving forward together. As they continued to grow their community, Jake's heart filled with gratitude for that ordinary Tuesday morning when he had held the elevator door. In the chaos of life, those simple moments could become the stepping stones to something truly remarkable. And as they looked onto the scene in front of them, the laughter and camaraderie swirling in the air, Jake realized one undeniable truth. Every small choice, every act of kindness had the power to create a ripple that could change lives. And sometimes, holding the door open was just the beginning. The elevator doors slid shut, encasing Jake in the familiar metallic confines of the high-rise building. Just another day in downtown Chicago, he thought, until he saw a figure sprinting toward him. A middle-aged man, suit wrinkled and hair tousled, waved frantically. The man gasped, his breath quickening as he stepped inside just milliseconds before the doors closed. Jake instinctively pressed the button to keep the door open a little longer, letting out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Acha," he said, relieved to be of help. The man caught his breath and shot Jake a grateful smile. "Thanks, no problem," Jake asked, feeling a surge of camaraderie. 22 came the quick reply, the older man's eyes darting between the buttons and the display above them, watching the numbers light up. They shared a moment of silence as the elevator began its ascent, the hum of machinery punctuating the stillness. Jake studied the man. There was something familiar about him, but he couldn't place it. Was he a business owner, an architect? Jake couldn't tell, but something about the man's presence hinted at authority. Suddenly, the elevator jolted violently, coming to a stop. The lights flickered, extinguishing any semblance of calm in the cabin. Jake started. The older man pressed the emergency button, but the response was cruelly absent. "Not usually," Jake said, masking his own rising panic. They were suspended midair, and with a grim look, he realized they could be stuck for a while. The man whispered, his confidence dissipating. He shifted from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable in the small space. Jake felt his stomach twist. "Hey, hang in there, help will come." But as they waited, shadows of doubt danced in Jake's mind. What if no one came? What if this was it? He glanced at the display, numbers flickered, and the air grew thick, almost suffocating. Jake attempted to keep the mood light. "Yeah, I'm actually the owner of this building," the man revealed, his voice steadying but still tinged with frustration. Jake's eyes widened. "Wait, you own this place?" "Thank you," Martin said, allowing a hint of pride to seep through his anxiety. "But it also comes with a lot of responsibility. Days get long and stressful." Jake asked, intrigued. "Like connection," Martin said, his tone shifting. "In the rush of business, I've lost touch with what it means to really connect with people." Jake nodded slowly, feeling an unexpected bond forming. "I get that. It's so easy to lose track of what matters when you're caught up in work." He gestured around at the stalled elevator. A flicker crossed Martin's face, and for an instant, the panic melted away. They shared a look that echoed a deeper understanding. Time stretched in the confined space, each second heavy with the weight of their thoughts. Suddenly, the elevator jolted again, unexpectedly lurching downward. Jake's heart raced as they felt the sudden movement. Martin asked, gripping the railing, but instead of moving downward, the elevator came to a jerky halt again, only to crack open the doors slightly. The light spilled into the dim compartment, but the automated voice they heard next sent a chill down Jake's spine. "We're aware of the situation." Jake glanced at Martin, the fear in his eyes mirrored his own. Their shared ordeal felt monumental now, trapped in this cage, insulated from the world beyond. Jake asked, wrestling to draw Martin out of his thoughts. "I used to love painting," Martin said, a glimmer resurfacing in his voice. "I haven't picked up a brush in years." "That's a shame," Jake said. And then, almost instinctively, they fell into a deep conversation about creativity, dreams, and the pressures of adulthood. Their surroundings faded away, and the elevator suddenly transformed from a claustrophobic prison into a sanctuary for vulnerability. As they spoke, there was an undeniable rhythm, an ebb and flow, as if they'd known each other far longer than the minutes elapsed. Sharing thoughts and stories became their lifeline, a way to battle the unsettling reality around them. But the moment was cut short. The elevator jolted to life with a grinding sound, and with that, the doors finally opened. A flood of light rushed in, harmony established in the noise of the lobby. Martin stepped out first, turning back to Jake, eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you for holding the door." Jake felt warmth swirl in his chest. "Anytime." As they parted ways, Jake couldn't shake the feeling of something monumental shifting inside him. He inched back into the rhythm of his day, but Martin lingered in his mind, a specter of thoughts and reflections he never expected to contemplate. That evening, Jake returned home, his mind tangled in wonder. The experience lingered with him like an unexpected dream. He opened his phone, scrolling idly through messages, but then one popped up, a new text from an unknown number. "Hey Jake, this is Martin, the building owner. Just wanted to drop a quick message to say thank you for being a decent human being." Stunned, Jake read the message again. Martin had taken the time to reach out to thank him. Their brief encounter had already seeped into something meaningful, something personal. Jake quickly typed back, "No problem, glad you made it out of there." The replies rolled in quickly, filled with anecdotes and insights from Martin's life, unearthing solemn truths and lighthearted moments. It felt cathartic, an exchange of humanity that both men desperately needed. After a brief pause, Martin sent another message, "How about coffee tomorrow?" The next day, they met at a cozy cafe just a few blocks from Martin's office. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating their secluded table, while the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped them like a warm hug. "Thanks for coming," Martin said, looking more relaxed than Jake had first seen him. "Couldn't miss it," Jake replied, sharing a smile. Over cups of coffee, their conversations deepened, weaving personal stories, dreams, and fears into a tapestry of shared humanity. Martin spoke about his passion for architecture and design, his voice lighting up whenever he discussed his projects. "It's funny how much time I spend building spaces for others while forgetting to nurture my own," he said, a hint of regret clouding his eyes. Jake felt a pang of empathy. "We often get lost in our own creations." With that, Martin's smile brightened. They laughed and shared memories, transforming the cafe into their own private sanctuary. Weeks passed, and with each meeting, their bond blossomed into something solid. They began exploring their city together, finding art shows, galleries, and cafes tucked away in idyllic corners. Both men felt unprecedented joy and relief, an awakening they never knew they needed. But then one chilly afternoon, Martin leaned back in his chair, a serious expression crossing his face. "You know, I didn't expect to find a friend in an elevator. You've changed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined." Jake felt the warmth of his words wrap around him. "And I've learned from you too." Just then, a thought crossed Martin's mind. What if we turned this friendship into something bigger? At first, Jake considered the idea, the spark igniting a flame of excitement. That would be amazing. We could organize events, workshops, anything to foster real connections. And before they knew it, the project started to bloom. They began shaping their vision, gathering resources, and planning events aimed at bringing strangers together. It transformed into a mission fueled by their friendship and a desire to combat the loneliness they both felt in their lives. Weeks turned into months as their initiative took shape. Their gatherings filled community centers, drawing in people from all walks of life. Laughter erupted, stories spilled, and friendships blossomed in a space they created as a haven for connection. Every time they held an event, Jake and Martin would reminisce about how their journey began. They realized that the hum of their shared lives echoed across the community, reshaping how people interacted with one another. Then one evening at a community gathering, as Jake looked out over the smiling faces and happy chatter, he felt a swell of pride in his chest. The impact of their friendship had rippled out, creating a wave of inclusivity that washed over the city. Amidst the laughter and sound, Martin turned to him, sincere eyes shining. Jake chuckled, shaking his head. As more faces filled the room, hope, warmth, and joy transcended the space. They had built something beautiful from that moment of vulnerability, transforming lives through connection and kindness. What began as a single elevator ride morphed into a movement, a testament to the power of human connection. And as the evening wound down, Jake realized that sometimes all it takes is holding a door open to let something extraordinary unfold. The elevator doors slid closed, sealing Jake in the familiar metallic embrace of the tower. After a long day at work, he leaned against the cool wall, ready to head home. But just as the elevator began its descent, he spotted a man racing down the hall, looking desperate. "Wait." The man's voice echoed down the corridor, filled with urgency. Without a second thought, Jake hit the button that held the door open, allowing the man to slip inside. "Thanks, man, you just saved me," the man gasped, catching his breath. Jake smiled, feeling a warm glow from the simple act of kindness. "No problem, 23, the man replied, straightening his tie. He looked a bit disheveled, as if he'd just come from an intense meeting. As the elevator began to ascend, Jake couldn't shake the feeling of familiarity. He looked at the man, whose eyes darted nervously between the buttons in the display above. "You look familiar." The man chuckled nervously, as if the question took him by surprise. "I'm not sure, I own this building actually," he said, flashing a quick smile. "Oh really?" Jake replied, curiosity piqued. Before Tom could answer, the elevator shuddered violently. The lights flickered and the calm hum turned into an unsettling silence. Jake's heart raced. Tom asked, panic creeping into his voice. "I have no idea," Jake managed to say, pressing the emergency button. Nothing happened. The elevator came to a jerky halt, leaving them suspended in uncertainty. "Great, just great," Tom muttered, running a hand through his hair. The weight of the moment settled heavily around them, amplifying the vulnerability felt in that small space. Minutes crawled by. Jake glanced at the display, no movement. The air felt thick and stifling, each second weighing heavier than the last. Jake tried to lighten the mood with humor. Tom let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. Not usually. He fell silent, his eyes distant. Jake felt a connection blooming in the shared tension of their predicament. "I get that." "Exactly," Tom replied, his voice softening. "I spend so much time at work." "Right," Tom said, a hint of gratitude breaking through his anxiety. Moments of kindness. The elevator lurched slightly, causing them both to glance at each other, a mix of hope and fear dancing in their expressions. Just then the lights flickered again, followed by a soft voice over the intercom. "We are aware of the situation." Jake took a deep breath. "At least they know we're in here," he said, trying to find the silver lining. A moment of silence stretched between them, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Suddenly Tom broke it. "I'm a graphic designer," he said, his voice steadying. "I work mostly on branding projects, making visuals that pop. I get it. As much as I love what I do, it can get repetitive," Tom admitted. "I designed this building years ago. It was a huge project for me." "Seems like we both could use a wake-up call," Jake said, a fleeting smile crossing his lips. Just as their laughter echoed through the crammed space, the elevator jolted again, this time shifting ominously as if it might grind back to life. Tom exclaimed, gripping the rail in excitement, but the elevator stopped abruptly again. Frustration marked Tom's face. The pause stretched longer than either of them wanted, and Jake felt the urgency in the air shift again. The connection they had formed began to fade under the weight of their situation. Jake asked, seeking comfort in personal stories. "My wife and kids are waiting for me at home," Tom said, his eyes softening. "I try to make it back for dinner every night, but sometimes work gets in the way." Jake nodded. "It's hard to balance everything." Finally, the elevator creaked, and with that familiar clunk, the doors opened slightly. Air rushed in with a burst of light, and they both squinted at the sudden clarity. A maintenance worker peered in, surprise flooding his expression. "Yeah, just stuck for a bit," Tom called out, relief flooding his voice. As they stepped out into the brightness of the lobby, Jake felt a rush of gratitude. "Thanks for holding the door earlier," Tom said, turning back to him. Jake smiled, feeling something shift inside him. Anytime, really. After exchanging goodbyes, Jake slipped back into the rhythm of his day, but he couldn't shake the encounter from his mind. The connection they shared felt unexpected but profoundly meaningful. Later that evening, as he settled down with a simple dinner, Jake's phone buzzed with a new message. He glanced at the screen. It was from an unfamiliar number. "Hey Jake, this is Tom, the owner you met in the elevator. Just wanted to say a quick thank you again for holding the door. It meant a lot more than you know." A sense of warmth spread through Jake's chest as he read the message. Without hesitation, he typed back, "No problem, I'm glad we had that conversation." Tom quickly replied, "Life has a way of pushing us in unexpected directions. I'd love to continue this chat over coffee." Jake felt excitement bubbling inside him. Sure, the next day they met at a small cafe that buzzed with energy. Sunlight poured in through the windows, casting a warm glow over the wooden tables and bright artwork on the walls. As Jake spotted Tom at a corner table, he noticed how much more relaxed he seemed. "Hey," Tom greeted with a genuine smile, motioning for Jake to sit down. "Wouldn't miss it," Jake said, adrenaline fueling the day. Over warm cups of coffee, they shared stories. Laughter punctuated Jake's tales of his career misadventures, while Tom revealed his passion for architecture and the weight of responsibility that came with it. "It's amazing that you designed this building." "It must have been a fulfilling project," Jake said, admiration creeping into his voice. It was, Tom replied, joy lighting up his face. But now I find myself buried in meetings and decisions that feel trivial in the grand scheme. Sometimes we need to reclaim that passion, Jake said. With each moment, the connection between them deepened, transforming the casual coffee into something more profound. As they chatted, they discussed dreams and the pressures that often suffocated them, revealing vulnerabilities that felt liberating, like opening a window in a stuffy room. They continued to meet regularly, filling their conversations with humor and insights. Soon the cafe became their haven, a space where they could connect during moments of vulnerability. One day I had an idea, Tom said one afternoon as they continued to sip their drinks, a sense of inspiration flickering in his eyes. What if we did something to encourage people to connect in the city? Jake felt a rush of excitement. I love that idea. We could organize events, workshops, he said, his mind racing with possibilities. From that point on, their friendship transformed into a mission. They brainstormed ideas, gathering resources for workshops that encouraged open conversations and connection. Their initiative began to gain traction. It felt like their little seed of kindness was about to grow into something beautiful. As the weeks rolled on, they hosted gatherings at various community centers. Laughter filled the air, mingling with stories of triumph and struggle. An unspoken bond grew among strangers, the atmosphere enveloped in warmth, camaraderie, and human connection. Jake couldn't believe how far they had come from that moment of panic in the elevator. What began as a stop-and-start journey of two strangers morphed into something large and transformative. They were creating change, a ripple effect that spread through relationships forged in honesty and openness. Then during a community event, Jake found himself standing in front of a crowd, watching smiling faces connect over cups of coffee. It felt surreal. In the midst of the chatter, he turned to Tom, who stood beside him, eyes sparkling. "Not in my wildest dreams," Tom replied, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "Holding that door changed everything for me." As the evening winded down, Jake felt a surge of gratitude. He realized that sometimes it's the smallest moments, a simple act of kindness, a few heartfelt words exchanged with a stranger that can create the most incredible impact. Life became more than just work and deadlines. It was a tapestry of connections, vibrant and rich, reminding him and all those involved of the importance of community, friendship, and kindness. As they walked out into the night, the streetlights glowing softly, Jake turned to Tom with a smile. "Exactly," Tom said, nodding thoughtfully. And in the heart of the bustling city, with their friendship in full bloom, they stepped forward together, ready to face whatever came next, spreading kindness wherever they went, one small act at a time. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing Jake within the metallic confines just as they began their ascent. It was a typical morning in downtown Chicago, busy, bustling, and mildly chaotic. Leaning against the wall, he anxiously tapped his foot, mind racing through the day ahead. He had a big presentation and the nerves were creeping in, but deep down, Jake felt ready. He just needed a perfect start. Suddenly he heard hurried footsteps racing down the corridor. The sound grew louder until a man appeared, wild-eyed and visibly frantic, making a beeline for the doors of the elevator. He shouted, arm outstretched, just as the doors began to close. Without thinking, Jake pressed the button to hold the door open. The door slid back and the man stumbled in, breathless. "Thanks, man. No worries," Jake replied, relieved he could help. It was just a quick gesture, but in that moment it felt significant. Jake continued, trying to break the ice. "Got to get to 21st, the man replied, adjusting his tie and smoothing his disheveled hair. He appeared to be in a suit, rushed but strangely out of place, as if the layers of his attire felt heavy on his shoulders. As the elevator glided up, the man turned toward Jake, a mixture of gratitude and anxiety etched on his face. "I'm Tom, by the way." Jake raised an eyebrow, noticing the confident yet weary light in Tom's eyes. "Really? Yep, it's a full-time gig, let me tell you," Tom said, chuckling lightly, though it brushed over a deeper fatigue. Jake nodded, but just as he was about to speak, the elevator jolted violently. Jake exclaimed, gripping the metal railing for balance. The lights flickered, leaving them in a disconcerting dimness. Tom asked, his tone shifted from hurried to anxious. "I hope not," Jake replied, a knot forming in his stomach as the elevator lurched to a complete stop. The silence that followed felt heavy and pressing. Tom pressed the emergency button, but only silence greeted them. "Great," Tom muttered under his breath, his confidence crumbling. "Just great." Jake couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. What if they were trapped for a long time? What if no one came? "Help will come," Jake said, trying to pull up his own sense of calm. "Yeah, right," Tom said, his voice flat, though he offered a wry smile in response. The tension hung in the air, palpable, as minutes felt like hours. As both of them stood there, the unease transformed. Jake tried to steer the conversation away from their predicament. "It's hectic. You'd be surprised how many people want to complain about a leaky sink or late maintenance," Tom replied. "But there's pride in it, too. I helped design this building." Jake nodded, appreciating the artistry that went into such a creation. "That's impressive." Yeah, it's all about creating spaces where people feel at home, Tom said, glancing up at the elevator ceiling as if searching for answers. In that moment, Jake sensed the vulnerability behind Tom's facade. Their shared situation had turned this bustling man into someone relatable, battling against the tide of everyday stress. Jake inquired, leaning in to know more. I used to paint when I had time, Tom answered with a distant gaze. I love expressing myself through art. Activity can be a lifeline, Jake said, nodding in agreement. The silence thickened again, a mix of understanding and regret hanging between them. Just then, there was a crackling sound over the intercom. We're aware of your situation. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him, but Tom remained tense. He muttered, either way, we're in this together, Jake responded, trying to be reassuring. You give a lot of yourself to others. Tom looked at Jake, the tension in his body softening slightly. Thanks. As minutes ticked by, their trapped scenario turned into an unexpected bonding moment. They shared stories, laughter, even moments that might have otherwise slipped away in the rush of everyday life. Tom quipped, forcing a smile as they both recognized the absurdity. Then we can start a podcast, Jake threw back playfully. That reckless humor cut through the tension, and suddenly the elevator felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. They shared more about their dreams and aspirations, souls laid bare in a place where vulnerability was unexpected yet crucial. But just as their conversation simmered into an easy rhythm, the elevator jolted again. This time it started moving, and both men felt their hearts leap. Tom exclaimed, but then it came to a sudden halt again. The doors flickered open slightly, revealing the light of the building's lobby, but it wouldn't budge any further. Tom groaned, pressing the button again. Just a little longer, Jake tried to console him. With renewed hope, Tom shouted, we're stuck. A maintenance worker's head popped into view, surprise painting his face. Jake called out, relief flooding him as they both stepped out into the lobby. Tom turned to Jake, sincerity etched on his face. Thank you for holding that door back there. Jake shrugged, feeling humbled. Anytime. As they parted ways, Jake made his way home, pondering the unexpected connection they had formed. That brief moment in the elevator lingered in his thoughts, a testament to the power of kindness, the beauty of human interaction. Later that evening, as he settled down to dinner, his phone chimed with a message. He blinked at the screen. It was a text from an unknown number. Hey Jake, this is Tom, the owner you met in the elevator. I just wanted to reach out and say thank you again for being such a decent human being. A smile spread across Jake's face. It felt good to connect beyond that shared moment. He quickly typed back, no problem, glad we made it out. Tom replied almost instantly, busy as ever. Jake responded, totally agree. Tom replied. The next day they met at a quaint cafe, sun streaming in through the large windows, illuminating the warm wooden interior. Tom looked relaxed, a stark contrast to the urgency from the previous day. Tom said, relief flooding his expression. Couldn't miss it, Jake replied, taking in the atmosphere. They dove into conversation as if they were lost friends. Tom spoke about his love for architecture, his voice lighting up as he shared stories about the building's design. I've forgotten to appreciate it. I'm so entrenched in the daily grind that the beauty gets hidden, Tom said, glancing about. You should paint again, Jake suggested gently. Tom shrugged, a smile flickering on his lips. I'd like that. As weeks went by, their friendship turned into something meaningful. They met regularly, bonding over coffee and shared experiences, each conversation layered with laughter, insights, and the kind of honesty that felt refreshing. One evening, as they sat sipping their drinks, Tom leaned back. You know, it's amazing how one small act of kindness can ripple into something larger. Jake couldn't shake the weight of Tom's words. It's true. Inspired by their discussions, an idea sparked in Tom's eyes. What if we did something to promote kindness and connection? Jake felt a rush of adrenaline. And just like that, their mission began. They scattered flyers and organized gatherings, bringing strangers together in a cozy, welcoming environment. Soon laughter resonated throughout their city, the warmth of shared stories igniting a fire within the community. The impact was palpable. People began to open up about their struggles, their dreams, and their lives, fostering a vibrant tapestry of connection woven from the threads of their experiences. Through the initiative, they were building bridges where loneliness once stood. Jake stood one evening in the middle of their biggest event yet, a warm ambience wrapped around him like a blanket. He surveyed the crowd, strangers mingled, laughter filled the air. Yeah, Tom responded, a spark of pride flickering in his eyes. Every time they held these gatherings, it reinforced the realization of how choice matters. Sometimes the smallest decisions can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. As weeks turned into months, their friendship solidified and grew stronger. They watched the community thrive, feeling the impact ripple through lives they had touched. Every coffee meeting turned into deeper discussions about dreams and the future. Jake turned toward Tom one evening, laughter still mingling with the remnants of their event. Nor did I, Tom agreed, his expression sincere. And so, they continued this beautiful journey together, bound by the moments that turned strangers into friends, a shared building, and the act of leaving the elevator door open just long enough to allow fate to weave its magic. They both knew that with a little kindness, life could surprise you in the best ways possible, opening doors they never thought would lead to such meaningful places. The elevator doors began to close, and Jake quickly pressed the button to hold them open. A man was rushing toward him, waving frantically as if the world depended on it. Just in time, the man slid inside, breathless and startled. He gasped, leaning against the wall of the cramped space. "Not a problem," Jake replied, glancing at the floor indicator above, watching as it lit up. 24, the man said, smoothing down his jacket. He looked dressed for success, sharp suit, polished shoes, but there was a sheen of stress glistening on his forehead. Jake nodded and noticed the man's eyes darting nervously. "Yeah, something like that," the man replied, taking a deep breath. "I'm the owner of this building." "Really impressive," Jake said, intrigued. "Oh, everything. Building maintenance, tenant issues, rent negotiations, you name it. It's a lot sometimes." Tom's eyes wore the weight of responsibility, but they also held the flicker of pride in his work. Before Jake could respond, the elevator jolted violently, coming to a sudden stop. The lights flickered, plunging them into a momentary dimness. Jake blurted, heart racing. "I don't know," Tom said, pressing the emergency button. "Nothing, just silence hanging between them like a heavy fog." They stood in that cramped space, uncertainty thickening the air. Minutes trickled by and the tension climbed. The hum of the building bustling above them faded into a haunting quiet. Tom finally groaned. "Help will arrive," Jake said, though he couldn't shake the doubt creeping into his mind. Tom looked at Jake with fatigue in his eyes, tension creeping into his voice. "Do you often get stuck in elevators?" Jake chuckled nervously. "Not really." That forced humor cracked a slight smile on Tom's face. Exactly. In that moment, the elevator was less of a cage and more like a shared bubble of vulnerability. Jake asked, leaning in to explore the man behind the title. "It was a dream of mine." "Hard to get here," Tom said, his voice softening. "But sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. The stress grabs hold of my life and I forget to enjoy it." Jake asked, genuinely curious. "Painting," Tom admitted, a distant look in his eyes. "I used to paint landscapes and portraits in my free time, but it's been too long." "Sounds like you need to reclaim that passion," Jake said, feeling an odd sense of connection forming. "Totally," Tom replied, his face brightening momentarily. Seconds morphed into endless minutes, and the weight of their exchange brought a sense of calm. But then the elevator lurched again, a twisting sensation following, and suddenly the lights flickered back on. "Please tell me we're moving," Tom said, hope in his voice. At that moment, the elevator jolted, then creaked quietly open, revealing the bright lights of the lobby. The sudden rush of light made Jake squint. They exchanged glances, both feeling the tension lift. A maintenance worker peered inside, eyes wide. "Yeah, just a little stuck," Tom said with a sigh of relief as he stepped into the bright lobby. "Glad you're out," the worker said, departing. As Jake stepped out, he felt gratitude swell within him. He asked Tom, "Yeah, thanks for holding the door," Tom said, genuine sincerity in his voice. Jake smiled, brushing it off. They exchanged quick pleasantries, but just as Jake turned to walk away, something tugged at him. There was something electric about this encounter, a fleeting connection worth holding on to. Later that evening at home, Jake lounged on his couch. His mind wandered back to Tom. The conversation, the unexpected bond, it all felt significant. Suddenly, his phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. Curiosity piqued, he opened it. "Hey Jake, this is Tom, the owner of the building you helped today. Just wanted to thank you again." A smile crept across Jake's face. He quickly replied, "No problem, glad you made it out." Tom responded almost instantly, "Thanks, I appreciate it. Perhaps we could grab coffee sometime." Heart racing, Jake felt excitement. Sure. The next day they met at a cozy cafe a few blocks away, sunlight pouring through the windows, creating a warm, inviting atmosphere. Tom looked more relaxed, his sharp suit replaced by a casual shirt. "Hey, thanks for coming," Tom greeted him, mirroring the smile Jake wore. "Wouldn't miss it," Jake replied, taking a seat across from him. They dove into conversation, a natural flow of words exchanging easily. Tom shared more about his journey as a building owner, excitement bubbling over as he spoke. "It's not all bad," Tom admitted. "I've had victories, too, small moments of joy when tenants become happy with their space." Jake asked, genuinely intrigued. "Honestly, I miss painting. It was my escape." There was a wistfulness to Tom's tone, a longing that stirred something deep within Jake. "You should pick it up again, turn the stress into art," Jake suggested warmly. "I might just do that," Tom said, a flicker of hope brightening his eyes. Their conversation deepened with every sip of coffee, revealing layers of vulnerability both men carried. They laughed, shared dreams, and bared the struggles of adulthood. It was clear that this friendship was blooming in the most unexpected way. Each meeting felt like a small piece of art, shaping their shared experience into something meaningful. Weeks rolled on and their bond continued to grow. They frequently met, relishing afternoons spent together in that same cafe, revealing more about their lives, their fears, and the choices that shaped them. One evening, as they wrapped up an especially insightful conversation, Tom leaned back, staring out the cafe window. "You know, this all started with a small act of kindness. That elevator incident changed everything for me." "Feels like fate," Jake agreed, a smile forming. Time passed, and one day, Tom suggested a new idea. "What if we took this connection and turned it into something more?" "Absolutely. We could create an art showcase or something that encourages connections, Jake said, feeling the excitement ripple through him. And suddenly, from their small shared moment in the elevator emerged a new mission. They brainstormed about how to encourage friendships and kindness in their community. As the idea took shape, they began spreading the word, gathering support from friends and neighbors. The energy was infectious. A vibrant movement was about to surge to life. As they watched their events blossom, laughter and connection filled the air. People who were once strangers shared stories, connecting through the simple act of opening up. The demand grew, and soon they were hosting community events regularly, creating a space for everyone to share their own truths. Jake stood one evening amidst a crowd that was flourishing, feeling the warmth wrap around him, a testament to the connections they were forging. Joy radiated visibly, spilling into the room like a cascade of smiles. Turning to Tom, he felt the weight of gratitude. Can you believe it all started from a brief moment in an elevator? Exactly, Tom said, a proud grin splitting his face. I never imagined that holding a door open would lead us here. As their community grew stronger, Jake felt more alive than ever. The simple moments, a cup of coffee, shared laughter, and vibrant conversations had woven them all together. One evening on the rooftop of the building he once managed, they gathered for a celebration of their community. The city skyline twinkled beneath them, and laughter echoed as they toasted to their journey. There, amidst the friends they had made, Jake turned to Tom. I'm grateful for that day. The door you held open led to this, and much more, Tom interjected, his eyes reflecting the shimmering lights of the city. From that initial moment in the elevator to a flourishing community, they understood that every small act of kindness could ripple out into something magnificent. In the heart of the city, surrounded by the community they had built, the realization settled deep within them. They had opened a door to a brighter world where connection flourished and kindness took root. The journey had just begun. Each day would bring new moments of joy waiting to be discovered. With friendship and unity guiding them, they were ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that sometimes all it takes is one small choice to change everything. The elevator doors began to close, the metallic hum echoing softly in the quiet lobby. Jake was just about to step inside when he spotted a flurry of movement. A middle-aged man, sharp-dressed but clearly rushed, sprinted down the hall, palms outstretched. He shouted, his voice mingling panic with desperation. Without thinking, Jake pressed the button to keep the door open, feeling a rush of satisfaction. The man rushed inside, panting as the doors slid shut behind him. Thanks. I thought I was going to miss it, he gasped, leaning against the wall of the elevator as it began its ascent. Not a problem, Jake replied, noticing the man's disheveled appearance and the signs of stress etched on his brow. Jake asked, trying to keep the conversation light. 22, the man replied, straightening his tie with a hurried hand. I'm Tom, by the way. Really impressive, Jake said, unable to hide his intrigue. The building was a beacon of modern architecture, and it was hard not to be curious about the man behind it. Yeah, but it's exhausting, Tom replied, his smile tinged with fatigue. The elevator continued its ascent, but just as they passed the 20th floor, it lurched violently, shaking them both. The lights flickered ominously. Jake started, gripping the railing. Great, Tom muttered, his demeanor darkening as the elevator came to a sudden stop. A chill of panic coursed through Jake. Not really, Tom answered, pressing the emergency button, but nothing happened. The air thickened with their shared anxiety, and silence enveloped them like a heavy blanket. They were suspended in time between the floors. We'll get out soon, Jake said, trying to sound reassuring, though he could feel his heart racing. Yeah, sure, Tom replied, but his voice carried the weight of uncertainty. Jake's mind raced. Would they be stuck here for hours? He glanced at the display above still, showing the number 21 flickering ominously. So, Jake joked, hoping to lighten the mood. Only on days like today, Tom replied, forcing a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. I had a meeting lined up. Life can throw curveballs, Jake said, trying to ease the rising tension, like holding a door for a stranger. Tom looked at him, really looked eyes softening. You know, you're right, at times it feels like we're just trapped in a grind. Moments passed, filled only with the strange hum of the elevator. Every tick of the clock felt heavier, but through the unease, they began to connect on a deeper level. Jake asked, genuinely curious. It's a lot to juggle. There are so many people to keep happy, Tom admitted. Painting, Jake's excitement broke through the stillness. It feels impossible to make time, Tom sighed, shifting his weight against the wall. As their conversation deepened, Jake felt a strange warmth between them, a sense of understanding. They were both caught in a web of life's pressures, but here they were, suspended in an elevator, finding a glimmer of connection. The elevator jolted again, and both men instinctively caught themselves. The sudden movement sent adrenaline rushing through Jake's veins. Then, just as abruptly, the elevator fell silent again. Tom said, frustration creeping back into his voice. Suddenly, the doors creaked open just a crack, illuminating a sliver of bright light outside. Jake and Tom exchanged glances filled with hope. Tom shouted, leaning forward, projecting his voice into the bright expanse of the lobby beyond. But instead of a warm welcome, the door remained ensnared, half open, half closed. Jake called, desperation creeping into his tone. With With a sudden jolt, the elevator lurched again, and as they both steadied themselves, the door opened fully this time. They stepped out into the bright lobby, feeling the rush of fresh air against their skin. Tom exclaimed, relief washing over him as he turned to Jake. "Thank you for holding the door back there. I really appreciate it." Jake shrugged, still catching his breath. "It's all good." Just as they exchanged goodbyes and Jake turned to leave, he felt an odd twist in his stomach, a nagging feeling that something profound had just happened between them. Later that evening, Jake settled on his couch, the day's events swirling in his mind. He couldn't shake the connection he felt with Tom, the unexpected depth of their conversation, the raw honesty. Just as he was about to lose himself in those thoughts, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Opening it, his heartbeat quickened. "Hey, Jake, this is Tom, the owner you met in the elevator. I just wanted to say thank you again for being decent." Jake's heart swelled at the message. He felt warmth spreading through him as he quickly typed back. "Glad you made it out," Tom replied swiftly. "Our chat was refreshing. Life is hectic, and it was nice to connect." Jake felt a rush of excitement and typed, "Sure." The next day they met at a quaint cafe filled with the aroma of brewing coffee and the gentle hum of laughter. Jake noticed that Tom seemed relaxed now, a stark contrast to the earlier turmoil. "Thanks for coming," Tom said, beaming as he motioned for Jake to take a seat. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it," Jake replied, taking in the cozy atmosphere. As they settled with cups in hand, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Tom spoke about his passion for architecture, excitement pouring from him as he detailed the projects he had undertaken. "It's exhausting sometimes," he admitted, "but incredibly rewarding. Still, I find myself wondering if it's my true passion or just what I'm good at." "Maybe it's not too late to return to that," Jake suggested. "Art can help us reconnect with ourselves." Tom considered this, and for a moment his eyes sparkled with something hope. "You're right, I think I've forgotten the joy in taking time for myself." Their conversations continued, weaving through laughter and life experiences. Every time they met, it deepened their bond, transforming a brief encounter in a stuck elevator into a foundation for a budding friendship. Weeks passed, and one afternoon, Jake leaned back in his chair, watching Tom as he scribbled on a napkin, a deep look of concentration on his face. "You look like you're plotting something," Jake teased. Tom chuckled, but then turned serious. "I have an idea. What if we create a community project, something to encourage people to share their stories, to connect?" Jake felt a surge of energy at the thought. That's an incredible idea. Excitement ignited within them, a chance to extend the connection they found in that confined space, turning it into something larger, something meaningful. Soon after, they began to plan, reaching out to friends and community members, gathering support for their initiative. Tension morphed into excitement as they watched their project take shape. On the night of their first event, they set up a community center filled with artworks, candles flickering softly around the room. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, laughter, and the rich aroma of food filling the air. Jake felt a thrill rush through him. Tom nodded, surveying the room filled with smiling faces. As people began to arrive, each new face brought stories and connections, weaving a web of community that expanded with each passing moment. But just when things seemed to be flowing perfectly, Jake spotted a familiar face in the crowd one he hadn't expected. Jake began, pointing toward the door. Tom turned to look, and both men felt a rush of recognition flood the atmosphere. A heaviness settled in as they realized that one of the new guests was a disgruntled former tenant. Tom muttered, his expression turning serious. Jake felt the tension spiral. Tom looked torn. "I don't want anything to ruin," but before he could finish, the former tenant, a man named Grant, moved closer, eyes narrowed with resentment. "You," he said, pointing at Tom. Jake felt the room shift. The joyous atmosphere suddenly hung in the balance. "Grant, let's talk about this," Tom said, stepping forward, his voice steady but filled with a hint of tension. "I've had it with your lies." Grant's voice rose, igniting a firestorm of whispers throughout the room. Jake watched as Tom's expression tightened, a storm brewing in his eyes. The harmony they had built in that moment of connection seemed threatened. "Let's keep this civil," Jake tried, stepping closer to Tom's side, feeling the need to support him. But Grant wasn't having it. "You don't know what it's like to be trapped in a place that's falling apart." In that instant, the air turned electric with tension, uncertainty weaving its way into the celebration they had built. Tom took a breath, eyes hardening, ready to confront the accusation that hung heavily in the air. "Maybe it's time we all shared our stories," Tom said, his voice firm, "including the mistakes I've made." And just as the crowd held its breath, the conversation hung in the air like a heavy fog, teetering on the brink of chaos. With emotions swirling around them, the night felt like it was about to unravel or perhaps, finally, bring unexpected truths to light. As Jake eyed the crowd, torn between fear and hope, he wondered how this night would end. Could they weather the storm together? Would their mission to create connection survive the tension unfolding before them? Or would the threads they had woven together begin to fray at the seams? The uncertainty loomed like dark clouds overhead, and in that moment everything felt like it was on the precipice of change, teetering between resolution and chaos, a defining moment for dreams, connection, and the power of choice.